Welcome back to the CVC. I'm your host, Jay.
I'm your host, Chris.
Hey, there's a lot that we got to get into.
A lot.
We are going to keep this episode a little short, though. All right, for starters, today the tush push was revoked. It was a 22-10 vote count. A minimum of 24 had to have passed it. What are your thoughts on the tush push being able to come back?
I don't like the play. I do see where like people deem it unsafe because it's a lot of helmet to helmet contact. But it also is a really short distance play. But the fact that you're like shoving men into other men too, like, I don't like how the defense doesn't have a design play to counter it yet. I know it has to be a defensive stop, but you would have to do a tush push towards a tush push.
Yeah, and that's the problem with it too, is defenders aren't allowed to push their own teammates while on defense.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily tush push against the tush push because then it would be a penalty. I think what the NFL should do is either you ban pushing your teammates altogether or you lift the ban on the defense.
I think the other thing is too, I think something that can at least alter the tush push is you can't have more than at least 6 offensive linemen in the play. Because sometimes it's like maybe 8 of them, 9, and then the rest of them is the quarterback and like maybe 2 skill players. Like you have an overabundance of O-line. And because, the defense, they're set what if they fake the tush push? So you got corners and linebackers in that play. It's not like they have all D-line going at O-line. So I think maybe you can at least limit that because, it goes back down to novice sports. Like, the X-Men rule, right? You exceed a certain weight, you can only play certain positions. Like, you won't really ever see an O-lineman other than it being a fumble or interception, whether it's an O-lineman or a D-lineman run with the ball. That's a non-rule in novice sports. If you're an X-Men, you can't lift the ball. So for those of you that don't know what an X-Men is, it's basically a child in their age group who is extremely not overweight, but just large for their age. So they are assigned to play offensive line or D-line, and they're kind of just set in that because of, one, the age that they're at, and it would just become unfair for them to stick a kid who is 8 and probably is 145 to 150 pounds playing running back. Like it's a bulldozer at that point in the backfield.
Which I'm not a doctor, but I don't think your 8-year-old child should be 145 to 150 at that point.
Yeah, definitely not. But I mean, you have those kids that will be large and like hit those growth spurts. But take that into pro sports. Like, there's no reason why Trent Williams should be running at you full force. I know he pulls those edge blocks, right? And that's unfair for a D lineman. I will deem that. Like, being a Niner fan, like it's awesome to see him move that fast and go tackle somebody and set up a play. But I play D-line, you play D-line. Having somebody twice your size, height and weight come in full force at you and you can't do nothing about it until the ball is snapped to prep for it is so unfair. You're going on your ass. So... Yeah, I think,
and that's another thing the NFL hasn't done is in the case that you are a smaller D lineman and you do have someone that's twice your size, D lineman can't chop outside of the tackle zone.
It's sad to see where the league is going, where it's very pro offense and protection of offensive players and not the defensive players.
Yeah,
like. I know they change rules out of safety and stuff, but we've watched so many hard-hitting games and highlights. Like, for instance, you could think of somebody like Ryan Clark who literally threw his body at people. And he doesn't get enough credit because he played alongside Troy Polamalu. But the dude was a game changer because of how physical he played. And I would have to do some digging, but I don't think he ever seriously injured somebody. I know he probably like limited the participation of somebody in a game for the contact, but I don't think he's ever actually like, you know, caused anybody to have CTE.
Yeah.
So
Or
yeah,
broke
I
their leg or
I think
something.
they just have to limit the amount of linemen that you allow in the tush push.
Yeah, agreed. All right, next one. The Niners extend Warner and what you've been asking for all offseason.
Man,
Extend Brock Purdy to a 5-year, $265 million contract.
I was clamoring for it last week, and it's like days after we uploaded, right? Or days after we recorded.
Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
happened the day after we were
Yeah,
recording last
yeah.
week's episode.
So, this is kind of like an after reaction. But I was so happy because the last couple seasons, we've seen a lot of drama when it came to extending 49er players. You got Debo, Ayuk, um, Trent Williams gave us some issues for re-signing. Uh, an abundance of players, even Nick Bosa. And this is like the one season where we're locking, those pivotal players in. Um, and then there's still some pieces, but signing our franchise quarterback, one of our most successful quarterbacks. I said before that, statistically, he kind of matches some of Jimmy G's first years with the 49ers, but being Mr. Irrelevant to now, statistically and where the media portrays him, he's a top 10 quarterback. I'm an honest 49er fan. I know we win with him, and I know we do better with him than without him. So I appreciate him, but I'll be honest, I know he's not Mahomes. I know he's not Josh Allen. He's not Joe Burrow. But we don't need him to be. We just need him to be Brock Purdy and let everybody else do their job.
Yeah. And
So,
I think the Brock Purdy hate
mm-hmm,
is very overdone.
mm-hmm.
I mean, how many teams can say their quarterback took them to the Super Bowl already in what was it,
His sophomore
his
year.
second year?
Yeah, his full year as a starter,
Yeah,
we went to the Super Bowl.
and his first year was when he had the UCL
Yeah,
injury, when Hassan Reddick came off the
yeah.
edge.
So it's it's good to see for him, man. His first full year as a starter, but we go to the Super Bowl. Like it's only up from here, and it's solid for a guy that got so much negative hate that
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the expectation, because that's the same draft class that we have Trey Lance in.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Purdy was somewhat of an insurance policy. And
Yeah.
if you go back to scouting reports in our OTAs of the rookie year, Shanahan did pull, I want to say, Jed York aside. And he said, I know we got number 5 out there, but I think our guy is Purdy. And it proved to be the case. And that's what
Yeah.
Jimmy G's still on the roster. Obviously, Jimmy G was going to be on the way out with Trey Lance coming in.
Yeah.
But we've seen how that debacle went.
Yeah.
But aside from Purdy, getting his locked in contract, I know I wasn't a fan of Kittle getting his extension, but because I thought it would hinder the amount of money. I see a lot of money getting thrown. We go out and extend the best linebacker in football right now, who I'm proud to say he's a 49er, and he's going to be a 49er potentially till the end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And
Unless
freak accident, something, like, or
yeah.
somebody just comes out of nowhere. And that, to say that he's the best linebacker in the league, says a lot, because there's so many good linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't overlook guys like Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen. There's the guys that are edges, but they're also linebackers. You
Mm-hmm.
have Micah Parsons, he's a linebacker, but that plays the edge. You got TJ Watt, he's a linebacker that plays the edge. So, yeah, you can't overlook it. There's guys, that can either be anomalies for a season, or
Mm-hmm.
they turn into long-term staples like Zach Bond last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw some stints with him in New Orleans, and then he turned into that linebacker for the Eagles, and I believe he signed with the Bears.
No,
No, he stayed with them.
he
Okay,
re-signed with
I
Philly.
I don't know why
He got
I was thinking of T.J. Edwards that went to the Bears from the Eagles. Um, but yeah, it's solid to see that we're signing these players now. I think the elephant in the room will eventually become Nick Bosa. I
mm-hmm.
see Bosa being a guy that is either traded or does not want to resign.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he'll be disgruntled towards the team or he'll think that we won't give him his money, but I just don't see Bosa being a guy that stays loyal to the team.
Mm-hmm.
We got him, I want to say, with the second overall pick.
Yep. Second pick
Um,
in the 2019 draft.
so it was kind of just we took the best available option, and he's been a solid player for us. But if I'm honest, statistically, the best defensive end last year hasn't even signed his extension yet, and that's Trey Hendrickson. I know he got an offer from the Bengals, but he hasn't signed it yet, and he was the sack leader. Bosa doesn't match Crosby. He doesn't match Parsons. He doesn't match Myles Garrett, and he doesn't match T.J. Watt in sacks. I don't know what it is with the down years. I have said that it's the fact that there isn't a comparable edge on the other side.
Yeah.
So Bosa gets the double team. I think that I don't know if it'll change this year with Salah coming back and us drafting that guy, Michael
Michael
Williams.
Williams.
So we'll see. He looks like a raw talent.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a project
It's
player.
also going to hinder on Michael Williams' development too,
Yeah.
because if Michael Williams can't attract more attention to him to
Mm-hmm.
help Bosa,
Yeah.
then it's just the same old game plan that
Yeah.
you guys have always ran.
And if not, if Bosa's taking the double teams, there's no reason why Michael Williams shouldn't be coming off that edge fast, hard, because he's gonna get the one-on-one matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Sucks for Bosa because he's the big name, he's the attraction on the defense,
Yeah,
which opens it up for Warner and other guys on the
but
defense. But
similar to the NBA and
mm-hmm.
LeBron, sometimes you don't have to be the one to make the plays.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to open it up for everyone else.
And we addressed a lot on the D line. Like we got those two defensive tackles, CJ West and the other guy's last name is Collins, but I can't remember his first name. But they look like some huge athletes as well. So um, I like that we went for the young direction. We've signed everybody that we've needed to sign, so we have the opportunity to take advantage of this very weak schedule. Um, I don't want to be the joke of the league if my 49ers turn out to make this schedule look opposite from where
I
it looks
I
now.
think I think I think with your guys' schedule, it's first seed or bust
Yeah, yeah,
because you guys are coming back healthy
hmm
with the same squad, obviously minus Debo. But
hmm
I mean, he had that one anomaly season
yeah,
when he split carries at running back as
hmm
well. And then obviously you have Ayuk out for the year, possibly
yeah.
with the ACL.
Where Juwan Jennings stepped up. Like even on the offensive side, like I just brought up defense, but Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are two guys that are going to need to and are going to step up this year
Mm-hmm.
because Ayuk is coming off the injury. There's still talks of him still even being traded. So I think that if Juwan Jennings makes the campaign for the number one receiver job, I
Mm-hmm.
still think Ayuk is out the door.
Yeah.
I think
Which, by
that
the way, I think Jawan Jennings as a wide receiver one, I don't think he can be the receiver that carries you through the game in terms of deep in the season.
yeah.
But I think he can be the receiver to take you deep in the preseason if Pearsall is able to step up and play his role that he's given.
Yeah.
Because Jawan Jennings is a very underrated wide
Mm-hmm.
receiver
Very physical,
that
a
would,
solid deep threat.
yeah, he would be a wide receiver two or
Mm,
one on like a bad team.
yeah, and he's one of Purdy's safety blankets. So um, I hope he builds on this season from what he was doing last season, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope now a healthy, healed up gunshot wound Ricky Pearsall
Yeah,
turns into the guy that we drafted in the first
yeah.
round last year.
Obviously,
So
knock on wood for everyone in the league to
yeah.
stay healthy.
But yeah, I'm happy that we got these contracts done. I'm happy that the schedule is favorable, and I'm sure the 49ers see the the fact that the Super Bowl is in Levi's as a potential home game. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
The I don't sleep on the NFC. The NFC East used to be the NFC least. They're one of the best divisions in the NFC now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, fuck the Cowboys. I'm not talking good about them. I'm talking about the rest of the 3 teams in the division. Commanders are going to be tough. The Eagles are going to be tough. The Giants, they have a young
The
core.
Giants are going to be competitive.
They have
in
a
the
young
East.
core.
They might finish last in the East, or they might finish third.
I think Russell Wilson will make a case.
Yeah.
I think his time in Pittsburgh, it was short lived,
Mhm.
and then his time with the Broncos was kind of like, you're not Russell Wilson anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's a vet, and maybe it's gonna transition from him
Yeah.
to Jackson Dart, right? At some
And who
point,
knows? Maybe Jackson Dart ends up being the next franchise
I see him
quarterback.
maybe taking on like a Bo Nix role, right? Like Bo Nix is that guy that like he wasn't the best quarterback in the draft, but he was very successful,
Yeah.
and he took advantage of this opportunity. Like that's another guy to watch out for in the
Mhm.
AFC. Like that's what I'm saying about
And
like
if
the NFC
there's
East. Like there's so many teams that are coming up. Like I can't just say the Niners are the best team in the NFC confidently anymore.
no,
So many teams are getting better.
yeah.
And this is why I brought up before that the window is closing. It is. I'll be so straight up. Even with everything we've done with these contracts, everything that we've done in the draft, the window is closing. Does it close this year? I don't think so. I think the window is there with the favorable schedule, right? Everybody's healthy. Could be next season. But I think we take advantage of the schedule, get ourselves as deep as we can into the playoffs, get a high seed. I would love the number 1 seed. I will settle for a 2 seed, right? I would love for them to play home, but
Man, but it's so hard with how great the NFC has gotten
yeah,
because even as the 2 seed,
yeah,
you could still run into like a Green Bay, a Tampa Bay,
hmm
a Minnesota,
yeah,
uh, a Washington team.
yeah,
It's just the NFL isn't at the point where there was the consistent playoff teams.
yeah,
The NFL is at the point now where you don't know which team is going to make it. You
hmm
obviously have an idea who's
yeah.
going to make it,
hmm
but no one predicted the Bengals to miss the playoffs last year.
No one predicted the Commanders to be a game away from the Super
Yeah,
Bowl.
exactly.
So it's like, aside from the NFC growing even stronger, and I feel like they were always the stronger conference. I've said before, the best football teams were in the NFC. The best quarterbacks are in the AFC.
Yeah.
Now you can say there's a toss up. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC, but there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are getting into an era where you're going to see a lot of different variations of successful football teams,
Mm-hmm.
because as everybody's getting better, players are coming in better. It's coming off a lot more competitive, and I think uh, it comes down to guys are just hungry and they want to see something
Mm-hmm.
different,
Yeah.
and they want to make the most for themselves, and they're
Yeah.
not going to stay loyal to a team that truly doesn't believe in them. Look at Saquon; he bought in on himself, went to the Eagles,
Paid off.
Super Bowl champion his first year there.
and
So,
and he got another payday extended
mm-hmm,
right after the Super Bowl.
yeah,
Um, but I want to talk about Green Bay.
okay,
You said that your guys' window is closing next year.
mm-hmm.
I think our window opens next year. We Jordan Love is going into his third year.
How confident are you in the Packers going to the playoffs this season?
I'm confident.
Outside of the wild card,
We do.
do you think you are a wild card team or you're in the playoffs?
No, I think we can win the division. And I don't want like people coming on here like, oh, he's just another delusional Packers fan.
Mm-hmm.
I get that we went 1-5
Yeah,
in the division last year.
there's no reason you guys shouldn't be successful, but I'm just saying you have Detroit to deal with. You could talk about the
Yeah,
other 2 teams, like Caleb just got a new coach.
yeah.
Uh,
And despite what the box score says, that's why
mm-hmm,
you watch the games.
mm-hmm,
Green Bay was in both games with Detroit.
mm-hmm,
Green Bay was in the games with Minnesota.
yeah,
Green Bay was in the games with Chicago.
mm-hmm,
The Packers didn't lose those games. They beat themselves up on offensive mistakes, Jordan Love mistakes, and obviously, Green Bay had one
yeah,
of the highest drop rates in the entire league
yeah,
when you have all these receivers coming in who are young,
mm-hmm,
who don't know what it's like to be in that moment,
yeah,
that just drop the ball constantly. But I think obviously the addition of Matthew Golden is going to determine.
Going to be a difference maker.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then Savion Williams, the receiver we drafted from TCU, he's a 6'5" receiver. He did have drop issues at TCU.
Yeah.
But
seems like TCU players do.
Drops in.
Yeah.
But if there's someone that can get this team to the peak, say what you want, but it's Matt LaFleur. I don't think there's. If we find Matt LaFleur right now, I don't think we'd be able to find a coach that can put us in the position he has put us.
It's that Shanahan tree, man. All these young coaches, they all majority come from that Shanahan tree. And say what you want about LaFleur, he's a solid coach. I think him, the disgruntledness with Rodgers kind of questioned how he was as a coach, and him kind of like taking a back seat. So okay, we got our guy in Jordan Love, but Rodgers made a case for an MVP. Well, he won an MVP that year,
back to back.
So it kind of made him look a little incompetent and wanting to replace Rodgers. But then Rodgers' character came out, so it's like okay, like separate him, but you still have the ties that Jordan Love is the successor to Aaron Rodgers. So I don't think Jordan Love deserves a hot seat.
No,
but he got the pay that he did. You see a lot of quarterbacks get a payday. Bring up two, most notable, Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott,
and T-Law,
who have an exuberant amount of money and are not successful quarterbacks. Jordan Love is different because he's made it to the playoffs. But I think there will be a trajectory of him getting into a hot seat if you guys do not make a deep playoff run. I'm not saying by this year or the next year, but it'll start to be a conversation. And it won't be fair to Jordan.
If we kind of get into like a Pittsburgh situation.
It won't be fair to Jordan because, his receivers just don't step up. We'll see if with these new additions make the current guys hungrier and if these younger guys step up, right? Like I want to see Matthew Golden be successful.
Yeah.
But Jaden Reed needs to put in some work.
There's no reason for Jaden Reed on the week I need him the most to drop 0 points in fantasy.
Zero, bro. That
goose egg.
Yeah, that was game changing for me this league. But yeah, man. I think it'll be an unfair conversation about Jordan Love, and it's not going to be something that he deserves because he's a very solid quarterback. I think it's just the fact that you tie him to being the successor. You tie him to being a Packer quarterback. Packers are known for having Hall of Fame level quarterbacks. You go from Favre to Rodgers to Love. You expect Love to be a part of that tree, not an in between guy.
You can't forget about the OG though, Bart Starr.
Yeah. I mean,
rest in peace.
Who knows what level of age our audience goes to if they're going to go that far. I know that the most
everyone knows Bart Starr though.
Of course.
He's even an Alabama legend.
Yeah. It's just it'll be unfortunate, but I don't wish that on him. I hope you guys do make a deep playoff run. I'm not just saying that because you're my co-host. Like, even the year that we beat you guys in the playoffs, it was kind of like.
I mean, we were a 30-second drive away.
Yeah. Like I knew it was close, and it was one of those things I was at peace with because I've seen my team get there. Say what you want about us losing to the Chiefs. Just getting to the Super Bowl is an accomplishment. All right? We would have 8 rings if it's not the loss to Joe Flacco and Ray Lewis, if it's not the loss to both times to Mahomes, have 8 rings there, bro.
And you can't be disappointed in those losses either. I mean, you played a Ray Lewis, Ed Reed defense, and then you also played arguably on trajectory to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah, it's just, man, that last Super Bowl really bugged me though against the Chiefs because if Greenlaw doesn't get hurt, bro, that game is so different. We had aside from the game being close, we had Mahomes shut down to the point that he turned into a mobile quarterback. Mahomes is not a mobile quarterback. Like he can use his legs, but he's not a mobile guy. And you watch that game back, aside from Valdez Scantling coming out of nowhere, didn't do shit all year, and popped off that one game. Um, it still doesn't sit right with me, bro. That Dre Greenlaw injury is what cost us the Super Bowl, because it went from us using the dual set linebacker set to now bringing in, I want to say it was Oren Burks, who was a former Packer,
Mm-hmm.
and
Current Eagle.
Flanagan Fowles, who was a rotation journeyman for us. I mean, he's been on the roster. I don't think he's with us this year. I think he signed with Baltimore. I might be wrong about that. Either that or Minnesota. But yeah, you bring in two guys to come in and pull off Greenlaw's role, and they weren't able to, man. And it left too much for Fred Warner to have to do by himself. Um, but yeah, man, enough about that Super Bowl. I had to relive it when we watched, or when I personally watched the receiver documentary on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, bro, this is in here. I wouldn't have watched this. Like, come on. Like, I know you got Kittle and Debo both in the documentary, but I didn't want to relive the Super Bowl ending.
Yeah, and
But
especially if you watch the mic'd up, like you could hear like the pain. You
disappointment,
could hear the
bro.
pain in Fred Warner's voice when he saw Greenlaw go down.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, so now obviously the conference finals has started.
yeah.
As we're recording this right now, the OKC Thunder put belt to ass on the Timberwolves back-to-back games. But we'll talk more about the Thunder and Timberwolves later on.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into Halliburton and his KD-esque shot where his foot was on the line, but instead of losing in overtime, the Pacers still willed it out to win in overtime. The Knicks just gave that game away.
Yeah.
You had Naismith finish with 30, Halliburton finished with 30, Nemhard had 15, 4, and 4. Siakam had 17, 6, and 5. McConnell gave you 10 off the bench. And then for the Knicks, Cat 35, Brunson gave you 43, Bridges gave you 16, Ananobi gave you 16, Josh Hart gave you 17 or 8, 13, and 7. So, how serious are the Pacers as a finals threat?
That game, I think, changed a lot of people's stance on them, because you see the Knicks as a favorite. They've been dominating in the regular season, and they've looked strong in the playoffs. They kind of benefited off of the Tatum injury.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I still think the Knicks would have won, though.
yeah, yeah, regardless, because what sucks for the Celtics is Tatum's out, Jaylen Brown can still step up, but it's not enough. And they both can't do it together sometimes. Like, one takes the brunt. Either one has a really great game, or the other one has a really great game. It's never common when they both pop off in a game, which the Knicks took advantage of. And then with that Tatum injury, bro, like, hopefully he heals up solid for next season. I believe he might miss some time for next regular
From
season.
what I've seen, he's supposedly supposed to miss the entire season next year.
Wow. Well, fantasy managers, don't look at drafting Jason Tatum unless you want to hold him on your IR and see if the Celtics make a deep playoff run, and then you could possibly grab him if your league goes that far. But yeah, the Pacers have made a case for themselves for sure, a strong case. They deserve some limelight. It's looking like, if you tie it back to the Sabonis and Halliburton trade, I know Sabonis has been great in Sacramento, but I think Sacramento gave up on Halliburton too soon. I know they believed in De'Aaron Fox, but now he's out of there as well.
Yeah.
So you could have had a really solid backcourt together with Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox. You would have obviously forced one of them to play the shooter. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Burden doesn't get enough, or Halliburton doesn't get enough love. I know I said before that this four-way matchup that we got going right now could potentially land the face of the NBA, at least as far as the guard position. You have SGA versus Anthony Edwards. You have Halliburton versus Jalen Brunson. Whoever meets in the finals, that is a conversation to have. Who's the best guard in pro basketball at this point in time? SGA got his MVP. That's something obviously we'll bring up, but uh, Halliburton is making a case, bro, in the East. The Knicks are looking like they're gonna choke to them.
Yeah.
They had a really strong presence. Halliburton is balling. They have a very. I don't feel like the core of the Pacers gets talked about enough.
No, I think Nemhard and Neesmith and Siakam this year and
Mathurin, bro,
Benedict Mathurin,
they
yeah,
go so deep.
yeah, Miles Turner, yeah,
Miles Turner
and
has been one of the best centers this
even
year.
former Laker Thomas Bryant,
Yeah,
he
he's been stepping up as
yeah,
well.
he gives the Pacers solid minutes off the bench,
Mm-hmm.
and then T.J. McConnell,
Yeah,
uh, uh, developed. I don't want to say developed, but more.
he's a seasoned guard for them. He's been on
Yeah,
that roster for a
yeah,
really long.
yeah. That's what
I
I'm
want to say
looking
that's the
for.
only team he's played for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. He McConnell was on the Sixers.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're right. Yeah, yeah, but I don't think like he was established as he is now.
No,
Yeah,
that's the word I'm looking
yeah. Even
for.
though
He's an established vet
yeah,
that
he may not be the lead point guard, but he he gives you minutes when Halliburton needs to rest.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not like you're gonna
Mm-mm.
kill. And then Obi Toppin, obviously former.
Former Nick, former Nick.
I want to say he was the third or fourth pick, maybe the
Yeah,
fifth pick.
yeah.
He was a very high pick.
Mm-hmm.
No, seventh, I think,
Mm-hmm.
but very high pick from New York. Obviously in his homecoming game.
Yeah.
But Obi Toppin has been stepping up with the Pacers after he was looking like a bust with the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the problem nowadays. I think fans put too much pressure on rookies,
Yeah.
especially fans from big markets.
Yeah.
I know as a Laker fan, I didn't have high expectations for Dalton Connect,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously he had, I believe, I want to say he had like a 30-point game or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, or if not close to 30.
Yeah.
But even when Dalton Connect,
He's gonna be a solid guy
yeah,
in that
I think
rotation.
Dalton Connect is going to be the shooting guard that takes over
Mm-hmm.
because I believe Austin Reeves is possibly going to be out the door by
Yeah.
next year.
He's gonna have a hefty price tag on him, and I don't know if that's the guy.
Some team is going to be willing to
Uh,
pay him
I don't
that.
know if that's the guy that you pair with Doncic when you have Connect right there, but yeah, the Pacers that whole core, man, they're solid. Obviously, we know that the Knicks are very talented. They're five starters. You know, they have a lot of connections, and they're a really well-oiled machine. But they, I don't know if it's just because you know it's so late in the year. They've played so many games that they're starting to fall off when it
Yeah.
matters the most. I mean, this is the most pressure for them
Mm-hmm.
because the Knicks haven't gotten this far in how long?
2000, I want to say it was 2000.
Yeah, so they're making a deep run. That city has so much, the New York State has so much pressure on that team right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Indiana, they've seen some success.
And
It's
not,
not that far
yeah.
along that we've seen a Super Bowl for the Colts. So, um, yeah, they're making a run.
Mm-hmm.
That team is still very young. They're gonna further develop where they're at. Um, I personally will take Miles Turner over Carl Anthony Towns right now, especially in this matchup center to center. I just think Turner's been playing some of the best ball.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the best centers this year.
Yeah.
Um, so I think too, the Pacers, even though I just said that OKC and Knicks match up well, I think that the Pacers also match up well
Yeah.
with as far as the young depth, the core, the role players that you have, they match up
Yeah.
really well with OKC.
It's just hard because when OKC has their threes drop in
Mm-hmm.
and Jalen Williams is cutting to the basket,
And how smart Shea is with the free throws, man.
Shay's
Dude
getting
averaged
to
like
the
10
line.
free throws a game, bro.
It's hard,
Mm-hmm.
especially
I know a lot of guys be calling him the free throw merchant, but to me, he's the MVP. I've been calling for SGA to get the MVP all year.
yeah.
So,
And I mean, like I just said, when you have Isaiah Joe, Chet, when SGA is hitting,
you got
when Jalen
Hardenstein,
Williams is
bro.
hitting, Hartenstein's protecting the rim. and then you have these other solid 3-point shooters
Yeah, you
coming
got
off.
Dort playing solid defense at the three,
Yeah,
bro.
it's a hard team to beat, and I don't see any reason why OKC shouldn't win the finals.
Yeah.
OKC is clearly the team to beat,
Mm-hmm.
and quite frankly, this is really just OKC's finals to lose.
Yeah, and it's insane to see how far OKC has come.
Yeah.
Because there was a point where OKC lost an identity after Kevin Durant leaving. Like, of course, you had Russell Westbrook still there,
Mm-hmm.
but it became the Russell Westbrook team.
Yeah.
Then, you get Paul George in there. Paul George has a great year with OKC. I'm surprised he doesn't stay, but that made his case to eventually go to the Clippers.
Yeah. Well, obviously, he gets traded
Mm-hmm.
to the Clippers, and then
That's the SGA trade.
you get SGA out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe 5 unprotected first round
Yeah.
picks from that.
And that just turns into everybody that they've drafted. You get Chet out of that draft pick.
Yeah.
Um, I They also have Case and Wallace too. That's another solid guard for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very deep,
Mm-hmm.
bro.
And you know what is also very underlooked that people don't recognize?
Mm.
SGA spent that 1 year with Chris Paul in OKC.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When you spend a whole year behind one of the greatest
The
basketball
point guard.
one of the greatest basketball
Mm-hmm.
IQs
Yeah,
of all
yeah.
time,
That's why I was excited that the Spurs got him, and then eventually we land De'Aaron Fox. That's a
yeah,
solid mentor
yeah.
to make Fox transition into the next great point guard. Any guard that has been around Chris Paul has been successful after. You saw it with Shea, you saw it with Devin Booker, and you're gonna see it with De'Aaron Fox and Stephen Castle.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I hope Chris Paul has a coaching career later in his career.
I think so. Chris
Mm-hmm.
Paul will eventually get a coaching job,
Yeah.
but Chris Paul, say what you want, CP 0 rings.
Mm-hmm.
That man's on the first ballot.
Oh, for sure.
All right, now we're gonna wrap up this episode with a little bit of fact or fiction, UFC edition. I got 4 quick facts for my co-host here to either claim or destroy it.
Sir.
All right. Jones and Aspinall is a fight we may never see.
I'll destroy that because I think it's going to become one of those things that it's going to be inevitable for John Jones. Um, I don't think he wants it tied to his legacy that he ran from Aspinall. And if he were to retire to avoid the fight, he will hurt not only the legitimacy of the heavyweight title because it does not currently hold its lineage, but he will hurt his own legacy. The pound per pound for pound GOAT that Dana White claims him to be. If he runs away from Tom Aspinall, it will hurt his legacy as being one of the greatest of all time. Um, I think the fight happens. I just think it's not going to happen when we want it to. I know there's a supposed rumored date that it happens in December. There's also the rumored date that it happens on the same night as the Crawford and Canelo fight.
UFC 320. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
Dana.
yeah. Like Dana's got to make it happen. I don't think it gets to the point that you back John Jones into a corner, but you can make it. It's going to be a fight that sells. It's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
fight. It's going to be one of the biggest fights since
Mm-hmm.
possibly in the heavyweight division since Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. Now that fight did happen around COVID. You didn't have fans there, but the importance of that fight is going to equal the same amount of this
Mm-hmm.
one. And, a lot of people have, Tom Aspinall as their pick. I personally do because I think he's the true heavyweight. He's going to defend the division. He deserves the shot. And he is one of the best, well rounded mixed martial artists
Yeah.
at that division. And I think he's one of the guys that can take away the notion that the heavyweight division is a joke right now.
Yeah, and I mean Aspinall at heavyweight
Mm-hmm.
does not move like a heavyweight.
No, he moves like a middleweight, like a welterweight. He's so fast. He's so strong. He's so powerful. And I think he's going to overwhelm John Jones. You saw him do it to Sergey Pavlovich.
Mm-hmm.
No one expected Tom Aspinall to beat Sergey the way that he did.
Yeah, and not only that,
I had Sergey as my pick.
Yeah, I did too because I didn't think Aspinall was going to be
No,
able.
and Sergey,
I gave Aspinall a chance against Sergey,
uh-huh.
but in the fashion that he beat him,
Yeah.
I did not expect. And another thing too, when you watch back the Miocic and Jones fight, there was
Mm-hmm.
times where Miocic had Jones backing up
Oh yeah.
because of his boxing.
I aside from the boxing too, it's just getting hit by light heavyweights that are so close to the weight class of middleweights. And a lot of the guys that John Jones fought, like Machida was a middleweight that transitioned into a light heavyweight. As middleweights got older, they started going to the light heavyweight division. Um, and John Jones took advantage of fighting those guys at that point in their careers. I mean, the infamous way that he slept Machida, literally has him in the guillotine and then drops him. But getting hit by a heavyweight with that mass behind them, like, yeah, Miocic is older. He's not in his prime at this point in time, but I'm sure he still has that power. Being a great boxer, knowing how to hit, and you got all that weight coming behind that punch. That's why you see a lot of knockouts in boxing, which I wish we saw more. Not for anybody to get injured, but it's just what makes contact sports,
Mm-hmm.
as far as boxing and MMA, exciting. Um, but yeah, I think Aspinall is going to overwhelm him when that fight happens. I hope that it happens, at least by the end of the year. But if not, it'll happen at some point. It's just a matter of when.
Poirier and Holloway has more at stake than we realize.
Um, I'll say fact. Um, for the fact that it's not only it being Dustin's potential last fight. We
No,
could.
guaranteed last fight,
I,
as far as we're aware.
I mean, we were damn near set that Volk was going to retire against Diego Lopez, right?
Yeah.
What's We're no one to say that Dustin doesn't win this fight in phenomenal fashion and says, "Damn, I just beat a Max Holloway who hasn't lost a step." Even though Max Holloway has gotten older, he's still at the top of his game. I wish he wasn't holding a gimmick UFC championship in the BMF title, but it's more so of a moniker than an actual legitimate world title. Um, and I think there's not too much implications on there for Dustin if he wins, but you could see a point where he says, you know what, I no, I want to keep going. I want to chase the lightweight title one more time. He will still be in that ranking. Um, if he retires, that just moves guys from the bottom up. You can see somebody
Mm-hmm.
like Patty Pimblett go from maybe 8-7 all the way up to 5 just because Poirier retires. So you can see a lot of things changing. That being a big conclusion to it. If Holloway, I don't. So I'll say it this way: if Holloway wins, it'll be more so a badge of honor fight
Mm-hmm.
because you fight the guy on his last fight and you put a show on for the fans, but with respect. I don't think Holloway goes in there with intentions to hurt Dustin. I don't think Dustin does either. I think they will show each other a lot of respect while making it competitive. And maybe they do, the stand in the middle. But I don't think it'll be to the point where Holloway knocked out Gaethje. I think it'll just be, look, let's sit here, let's box, and let's just land for each other and leave it all out here. But I don't think they'll get to the point where there's going to be a knockout. I think
Mm-hmm.
um, what it does for Holloway, it just continues to make his case. Like, he'll fight anybody. He's at the top of his game, and get get back to talks into a world title position.
Yeah. I just want to say, when I watched that Gaethje Holloway fight,
Yeah,
him pointing in the ring,
yeah,
in the center of the ring, and knocking him
and a
out
buzzer beater knockout.
was so badass.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, third one. Shimaev winning the title at 319 is good for the weight class.
Uh, I mean, this is a guy that has bounced, right? He's fought catch weight fights. He's fought at welter and he's fought at middle. Um, I I did not believe in DDP as a champion. Um, but I do think that we will see. So I'm gonna go with fact. I do think Chimaev being a champion, being so dominant in his fights, right? Not a lot of people have battle tested him and pushed him to the limit. You see the damage he did to Whitaker as well, a former middleweight champion.
Straight up broke his jaw.
Yeah. So I think it'll be good for the division, and then it'll build fights where who who wants to earn to go through a gauntlet with Chimaev? It's going to create an underdog story. It's going to be similar to that of Islam. It's going to be similar to that of Habib. People stepping up to him and possibly, going through some of the best wrestling, because these are Dagestan guys that we are talking about, and um, it's going to turn into who's going to beat him. I think it's good for the sport because guys will step up. I would love to see an Adesanya versus Chimaev fight, even though I think Chimaev is way too dominant for Adesanya. But I would like to see the fight. I think the press conference would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Chimaev just smashes through the division, bro.
I think Adesanya has lost a step to. I think he can still compete for the title, but I think it'll depend on who's holding the title.
Yeah.
And like you said, Chimaev has been so dominant
Yeah.
in his weight class that it's almost going to be hard to take him off.
Yeah. I mean, you still got Strickland in there.
Yeah.
So there's guys you can throw at Chimaev if he wins the title. I know not a lot of people picked DDP to defend and win against Adesanya when he defended against him recently, but I I don't know. I don't know if there right now is a middleweight that, if Chimaev becomes champion, can really contest at him. One guy that I can throw back at him, but he would need to come up in weight, is Kamaru Usman, just because of the wrestling ability. I think, Usman is still stylistically strong. I still think he's one of the better welterweights in the division. He just has to climb the rankings.
Yeah.
So uh, it it'll be interesting to see how Hamzat does. Another fight that has potential there, that I know a lot of people don't talk about, is Shavkat versus Chimaev.
Yeah.
I think stylistically there's a lot there. Shavkat can possibly answer with his techniques to Chimaev's strength.
If only he wasn't the Joel Embiid of his weight class.
Man, bro, man, that that Ian Gary fight really diminished him.
Yeah. All right. Last one for you, and we'll wrap this up.
All right.
Demetrius Johnson is the greatest flyweight of all time.
Man, I mean, there's Renan Bell, the Brazilian legend. Isn't Henry Cejudo from the same weight class?
Yeah.
So he's a triple crown. I want to say Frankie Edgar fought at the flyweight division and eventually went to the lightweight. McGregor didn't make his name as the flyweight, right? I mean, at the point in time, he was blitzing a division that a lot of people didn't have their eyes on. I think, not a lot of people recognized him for being so great until after he left the UFC. It's kind of like you look at his resume, and then he leaves to one championship and becomes even greater there with his resume. He becomes champion there, officially retires at one. I don't think he's a guy that needs to make a return to the UFC at all. I think he's proven himself. Like, it would be nice to see a Demetrius Johnson versus Pantoja fight. I think that's the only fight that would really sell for that division. But I would say at his division, respectively, that he is the John Jones of that division as far as John Jones with the lightweight division. He definitely is pound for pound there.
Man, I threw that one at you because I was thinking about that myself too. I mean, obviously you had Cejudo, and
I think Cejudo is the only other one that, like, or you got Uriah Faber too. So there's guys you can throw in there, but no one has the resume of Demetrius Johnson.
And how dominant Demetrius was
Yeah,
too.
I think the only guy that you put up close to him is Henry Cejudo.
Yeah. With that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning into the CB Central podcast this week. But before we end, I'd like to give a shout out to our partners over at W.
Hey, the energy drink that helps you be better. Just like ourselves, week to week, we try to produce the best content we can and be better for ourselves and give you guys some solid content. Um, Make sure y'all tune in to all their products, man. They got powders, energy drinks. Make sure you use CV Central at checkout. Um, and it flies off the shelf, man. You'll see a lot of stuff that gets sold out because it's just that good.
Yeah, man. I know we've said that we were trying to cover a lot of sports. I know I'm aware that the hockey conference finals have started. I'm aware of some golf tournaments that have happened. Obviously, we got requests for
Mm-hmm.
bare knuckle boxing,
Yep.
but that's just stuff that we got to dive more
Mm-hmm.
into.
Yeah, and sometimes this stuff is happening live as we're recording. Um, and we may not be live, but you guys are here with us, and you guys hear our live thoughts. Like we said earlier, OKC belt to ass against the Timberwolves. So, hey,
That being said, I'm your host, Jake.
I'm your host, Chris. Hey, peace.